Oh, we got into some juicy gore and killing and bloodshed and fortune telling. Welcome to Reading Through the Bible with Foluke. Today, we are going to get even further into the book of Genesis, reading through Genesis 16 as we continue the story of Abram. God has promised him for the second time that he is going to give him descendants and land. So let's see how God keeps his promise to Abram. Now, Sarai, Abram's wife, in case you forgot, had not been able to bear children for him. We know this. He knew this. Before he left his dad, before God called him, he knew his wife was barren and he was okay with it. She's absolutely beautiful. We'll keep finding out how beautiful Sarai was, but she's absolutely beautiful, so I'll take you. But she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. You guys remember how she got this Egyptian servant? So there was a famine in the land of Canaan where Abram and Sarai have been camping out in tents, wanderers, right? Nomads. And there was a famine, but Abram's faith at that stage, this stage, um, was not strong enough to believe that that sovereign God that he is trusting to bring him a son and descendants, he didn't seem to trust that that sovereign God would provide for him on the land that he had given him. So Abram went to Egypt. Some people are like, okay, well, how do we know that was a bad thing? Like, he was hungry. Like, wouldn't you do that? Sure. Um, my faith was not as strong as Abram's later was. But yes, my faith would have been like Abram's, and I'm like, I'm hungry. But because Abram didn't believe God to provide for him in the land that God had given him, he went to Egypt. And we know it wasn't a good decision because of the result of it. Okay. I'm not trying to read between the lines or make the Bible say things it didn't say. But the result of Abram going into Egypt was that he brought out male and female servants. You guys remember? And now we get to hear about one of those female servants. Was it a good thing? No. Remember the line of more than one wife? Was not exactly on the righteous side of the genealogy. And by the way, there's this thing called prescriptive versus what is it? So when we read through the Bible, we're reading what really happened, right? So we're reading the words, but it doesn't mean that that is what God is telling us we should do. He's simply telling us this is what they did, right? So we're reading what human beings did. And one of the blessings of reading what they did when they messed up is that we can see ourselves in their story, not to do what they did, but to learn from what they did, right? And to see how merciful God is and was. That's what we're supposed to get. We're not supposed to say, well, they did it, so can I. They kind of suffer some consequences too. Maybe you don't want to, okay? But I digress. So, now Sarai, Abram's wife, had not been able to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "The Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her." And Abram agreed with Sarai's proposal, because why not? But this is the thing. So this wasn't just like Abraham, slept with his servant. People didn't do things like that back then. There was actual agreements about sex. And so he had to marry her. So you didn't just sleep with anybody. Like, who does that? So he married her. And there's a wife, and then there's a lower class wife that's still a wife, and that's called a concubine. A concubine is a slave wife. A wife because you married your servant. you bought her and then you married her. So she gets the same privileges as a wife, although she's looked down less. And the children that come from that union are not, are not ranked as high, do not get as the same privileges as the children from the free wife. Okay. So that's something to remember. So it's not like Abram just like went and slept with her. There was a marriage, a covenant between them. And the benefit, by the way, of a concubine, the benefit of marrying your servant was that with slaves, right, with servants, you could sell them, you could trade them, right? But you could not legally trade your own, which is what a wife is, right? She's now yours. She's now like, you have a covenant with her. Flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone, right? Covenant with her. So a concubine and her children could never be sold. So that's the blessing, the protection of the union of a master and a slave wife is that he could never sell her or her children. You can sell any of the other servants, but never his concubine. Okay. And we'll find out later that Abram does not ever sell her. So let's keep going. Oh, but then remember I told you that there was a little bit, and maybe it's just the translation. Okay, we got to be careful about translations, but at least the translation in my text gave the impression that God said the child would be Abram's, but it didn't exactly clarify. Maybe Sarai decided not to see that part that assumed that it would be hers. So, well, this child, if you have it with her, with Hagar, it'll still be Abram's child. The other thing, by the way, too, is that when a child was born to a servant, the owner of that servant owned the child. So legally, the child would be Sarai's child, legally. And she could do whatever she wanted, not sell the child, because again, it's her child now, right? You don't sell your children. So she legally would be the mother of this child. So very interesting way. Some people did that back in the days, way biblical days. And they would have children through their servants, and we see other cases of it with Jacob and his wife Rachel, who had a similar situation. Now, the interesting thing too that Sarai said, and she's actually so right about this, but she makes the mistake that other people make back then and even now. She acknowledges that God is the one preventing her from having children because she understands, as some people don't, that God is the giver of life and the taker of it, both, because he is sovereign. And she understood that God is the giver of life, and the giver of life is preventing her from producing life. But instead of trusting that this giver of life, who's made this promise to my husband, could fulfill it through me, she's like, we've been waiting for I don't know how long, according to this passage right here. I'm trying to think. I don't think it said how old they were when they left Ur of the Chaldeans to 100 years when the baby was born, but I'm guessing it was somewhere around 50, right? And so time has been passing, and she's like, I still don't see it. I still don't see it. Not this month. Not this month. Month, another year, another decade. And she's not seeing this baby. So maybe I misunderstood. I feel like there's another bit of deception going on here. But this is what happens. Abram agreed with Sarai's proposal. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. For people who somehow argue that Abram didn't marry Hagar, I don't know how you can argue with that, but okay. But that is exactly what happened. This happened 10 years after Abram settled in the land of Canaan. So the text is trying to give us an idea of the age. I don't have it readily available to me here from when Abram left his dad, but I would put Abram at probably around 55 years old or so. We know how old his dad was when his dad died, but I'm not readily seeing how old Abram was when he left. Okay, but we know that he's been in the land for 10 years now. Okay, if somebody knows that, let me know. If I find it later, I'll put it in the comments in the chat. Okay, so Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, his wife, and she became pregnant. But when Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress Sarai with contempt. Like, I could do something you can't do. Look at my belly, girl. Look at my belly, girl. Hey. She may not have said it quite like that, but maybe she did. Then Sarai said to Abram, "This is all your fault." What? Well, maybe, yeah, that's true. She couldn't be pregnant if you hadn't done the deed, so it's your fault. Why'd you do that? I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show who's wrong, you or me. This is interesting. Who did the worst deed? So initially, I read this as Sarai saying the Lord will determine who's wrong between you and me, in that me giving Hagar to you as a wife, or you agreeing and you sleeping with her. But then, as I've read this over recently with you guys, I recall that Abram basically had Sarah sleeping with Pharaoh. Was it Pharaoh? Remember when they were, oh yeah, Pharaoh in Egypt, right? And Abram was scared that they might kill him because his wife was so gorgeous. So he's like, she's my sister, and Pharaoh took her. And we don't know how long Pharaoh had her as his wife before God was like, yeah, stuff started happening to the people around them, right? So it wasn't as if it was overnight, not in this particular instance. So I'm possible. This is possible. I'm wondering if Sarah is saying the Lord will determine which one of us is wrong or more wrong. You having me sleep with Pharaoh, or me having you sleep with Hagar. May God judge between you and me. There. Abram replied, "Look, she's your servant. So deal with her as you see fit." Then Sarai treated Hagar so harshly. Oh, I can only imagine what that looks like. I think we have an idea. We're very exposed to American slavery. I think we have an idea how Sarai treated Hagar, and it was not pretty. And it was so bad, mind you, she's pregnant. It was so bad that Hagar's like, I need to run away to save me and my baby. This woman gonna kill me. Let's forget the fact that I was na 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 to her, right? I got a baby and you don't. But now this chick's treating me all kinds of bad. I don't know if she cut my food rations, making me wear rags, putting coals on my bed. I don't know what Sarai did, but Hagar was done with it. I'm out of here. Peace out. But she kind of forgot they own her. Then Sarai treated Hagar so harshly that she finally, that means like she tried really hard not to, but finally ran away. The angel of the Lord, maybe that's what Sarai was trying to get her to do. Like, I'm gonna beat you so bad, you get out of here. I don't want that baby that bad. You and all that. Mm-mm-mm. The angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness along the road to Shur. She was basically heading back to Egypt, if my directional system is right. The angel said to her, Hagar, Sarai's servant, let me tell you your identity. In case you forgot, I know your name, and I also know who your master is, your mistress, your owner. So let me tell you your identity. God is really good about that. He reminds us of who we are, even when we forget, even when we don't know, even when we run away from our identity. So here is Hagar by the spring of water, which means she's not starving at this point, or, she has refreshment. Whew. And she is away from that horrible mistress that was beating her. I say beating, the Bible doesn't say beating, but treating her real, real, real bad. And God found her right there. And I'm sure living in a household with Abram and Sarai, she had some understanding of who the living God was. So when he comes to her, it may not be that foreign. She may hear conversations, them talking about this Lord, this sovereign Lord. And here he is coming to her. This is interesting. Okay. God is speaking to a Gentile, right? She won't be the only Gentile that God shows himself to, but he's speaking to her. Why? But I do want to make sure you understand how important it is that the first thing God does is remind her of who she is. Hagar. Yep, that's your name. Sarai's servant. Yes, that's your position. Where have you come from? Now I need you to locate yourself. Where are you going? I see where you are. But do you know where you came from, and do you know where you're going? Let's take an evaluation. And this is her answer. She doesn't, well, she does say where she's coming from, but she doesn't quite say where she's going. I wonder if she really, really, really knew. Her response is, I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai. One, she didn't correct him. Yep, that's my name. Two, yeah, I am her mistress. I'm sorry, she is my mistress. I am her servant. Now you ask me, where have I come from? I can answer you that. I'm running away from her. But she did not answer the question, where are you going? Did she know? Sometimes people are running away from something. I always caution people when they're making business decisions and life decisions to be very careful when you are changing careers, changing locations, changing relationships, right? Are you running to something, or are you running away from something? Because if you're running to something, awesome, go for it, right? There's a destination, there's a purpose. But if you're running away from something because you haven't dealt with it, that's not usually a good thing. You want to learn and grow. So in this situation, Sarai was running away from something, but she never identified where she was running to. So the angel of the Lord chimes in, and he says, or the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress. I wonder how firmly he said that. Was it a return to your mistress, or was it a return to your mistress? I think it was a bit in between, maybe a bit more loving but firm. Return to your mistress and submit to her authority. Then he added, I will give you more descendants than you can count. So again, he knows who she is. He knows whose she is because she does belong to them. And then God gives her a bit of a promise. I know it's hard. I know she is causing you a lot of grief. I know it. But I'm promising you there's a reward on the other side. If you go back, if you stop running away, if you submit to her authority, as cruel as she is. How many times have people been in slavery under some serious cruelty? And you know, God's answer was not run away. Not in this situation, anyways. Now, I'm not speaking broadly about every situation, but in this situation for Hagar, God's answer was submit. I know it's cruel, but I'm telling you, on the other side, there will be descendants upon descendants upon descendants, and there's a blessing in it. Even if you will not live to see it, there's descendants, more descendants than you can count. And he said, I will give it to you. Not Sarai, not Abram. I am blessing you, Hagar, with more descendants than you can count. He said you twice. I will give you more descendants than you can count. But first you must return and you must submit. And the angel also said, you are now pregnant and I will give, you are now pregnant and, not I will, you are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. Mind you, she already knows she was pregnant. That's what's caused this whole havoc. It's not like he just, put the seed in her. She knows, I know I'm pregnant. Thank you very much for that observation, Lord God. But he tells her something she didn't know. You will give birth to a son. You are to name him Ishmael. I believe so far in this Bible, up until this point, it has been the women naming the sons. I wonder if I'm wrong about any of this, but every time it said who named the child, it's so far. It's not every case in the Bible, so just, but once again, it's God giving the name to Hagar, not to Abram. Okay. He says, you will name him Ishmael, which means God hears. For the Lord has heard your cry of distress. This son of yours will be a wild man. Let me predict the future. Let me tell you what to expect. This son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as a wild donkey. Now, what mother wants to hear that? What? Okay, so you're telling Abram that his descendants are going to be in slavery for 400 years? Okay. And now you're telling Hagar, your child going to be wild donkey. He going to be real wild, untamable. Okay. Thanks. Um, he will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live in open hostility against all his relatives. Okay. I put a little note here. I said, I wonder if this was like the first, what is it, like the divorce status, like the response to a divorce, because it's coming. We'll see it in a second. But is that what happens when when people get divorced, their children? That's not the case. I'm just saying. But this prediction from God is like, why? But we know why. It's because Abram stepped out of God's provision for him. Him and Sarai decided to find their own provision, their own way. And this is the result. Thereafter, Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord who had spoken to her. She said, you are the God who sees me. She also said, have I truly seen the one who sees me? So that well was named Bir Lahai Roi, which means well of the living one who sees me. It can still be found between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar gave Abram a son, And it says, and Abram named him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. So we can say that they've been on the land since Abram was about 76. Now we're getting some ages. But I want to bring to your attention something. It took me many, many, many years to find this. Of all the people in the Bible to give God a name, usually God gave himself a name. um, Jehovah Jireh, right? But do you know that Hagar, of all the people, this Gentile woman, this slave girl, she's the only female in the Bible to give God a name. Jehovah El Roi, the God who sees me. She went from being told that her son would be named Ishmael. God hears. God hears. He heard all of her cries and her pains, and he heard everything that was happening in that house that she was enduring. And now she got to name God, and she called him Jehovah El Roi. God, you see me. I got to see the God who sees me. What peace does that give a person? So when she returned to Sarai, you can only imagine that her posture was so different. There was no more, na 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 na, I got a baby and you don't. What does that matter when God sees me? He's already promised me that this child gonna be wild. But there's going to be so many children, so many descendants, I won't be able to name them all. What peace and comfort does that give a single mom? Well, I don't know what you're facing, but maybe today you needed to hear that. Because God is still Jehovah El Roi. He still sees you right where you are. Will you follow his command like Hagar did? Will you return and submit? Whatever the situation is, as God is leading and the Holy Spirit is directing, right? Will you obey? That's it for Genesis 16. I am Foluke Olayale. You are reading through the Bible with me. Until next time.